Will the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Wednesday, November 7th, 2018, please come to order? For the benefit of those who may not have participated in a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, our procedures are as follows. We will read the legal call of the meeting as published in the local newspapers. The applicant will be invited to come forward and present the case, explaining to the Commission and others present what is being requested of this property. Comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any. There will be clarifying questions from the commissioners. There will be then an opportunity for clarifying questions from the audience. First, those who wish to support the application may come forward, and second, those who oppose the application will be invited to come forward and express their opinion. As this is a public hearing, it must be recorded. It is necessary for speakers to identify themselves, state their name and address before addressing the commission. The applicant is then free to leave or remain for the balance of the public hearing and the regular meeting, at which time the commission will try and reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of this commission and has the right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. Decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Planning and Zoning Office, 453-8039, after 9 a.m. Seated this evening are the following members: Sean Cosgrove, Jason Marchi, Richard Wallace, I'm Philip Johnson, Alan Brown, Matt Yersinski, and Scott Edmond. Videographer is Peter Schultz. We also have George Kroll, Aaron Mannix, and Lisa Piombino. As this is not a public hearing, I don't believe that there are any legal notices to be read.
We're not noticing anything, sir.
So, that being said, let's just move right to our agenda. Deliberation of public hearings, Guilford Agricultural Society. George, you want to open for us?
Let me just give you an update or a review of where this all stands. I know it's been ongoing for a while. We had a two-part application from the Agricultural Society. Part one was to construct some additional buildings. Part two was to modify the special permit conditions, a couple of the special permit conditions relating to the way they operate and the types of uses that are allowed. The first part of the application, the building part of it, has been withdrawn, and that's pending before the Wetlands Commission now. The second part is the subject of the public hearing that was held at our last meeting. You closed the public hearing, so there's no further input allowed by the applicant or by the public. At the last meeting, I think I may have expressed a desire to see if I could work with the applicant and also the property owners to come up with some kind of proposal that would be mutually acceptable to all parties. I'm not able to do that. I did draft a proposal with various conditions for discussion. I did receive some feedback from the Ag Society with some fairly specific comments about my draft. I also spoke to at least two of the neighbors who expressed strong opposition to the conditions that I was suggesting. So I think that leaves us, you, with the need to make a decision on the original on the application that's pending before us. There is no compromise application or set of conditions that I could recommend right now. Just to further bring us up to speed, the Ag Society requested in their petition to amend the special permit conditions to do two things. One was to eliminate the words of a non-profit nature from condition number 5 of the 1989 special permit. You have a copy of that in front of you. Of their understanding and their testimony, if that non-profit nature language was removed, that would allow them to use the facility, the property, for things like weddings and family reunions and similar types of events. They also requested that you eliminate condition number 2 from the April 22nd, 2016 special permit amendment. That condition was put in place so with a requirement that the Ag Society give the Commission a 6-month notice of all events that were likely to be occurring on the property, and that then the commission and/or its agents, your staff, would review those proposed activities to determine whether or not they were in compliance with the conditions of the original special permit, the 1989 special permit, which has some language which suggests the types of activities that would be allowed. So the question before you is, will you approve the petition from the Ag Society to eliminate those two conditions or modify them, or deny that application, or conceivably approve it with some conditions? That's where we are tonight. You don't have to take action on tonight. As you know, you have 65 days after the conclusion of the public hearing to act, but we don't have any suggestions for you by way of compromise, which was at least our original hope.
Just kind of, part of this is on May 2, that when we extended this to try and come up with some compromise solutions, one of the problematic pieces of it for me, thinking about it over the course of the week, is we really need to have a public hearing to have public comment on whatever those solutions might be, because it shouldn't just be a unilateral decision amongst us. So that was my feeling in terms of, while it would have been nice to have, that as an option, I think I still would have recommended that it go to a public hearing and that we start this over again and try and develop that. And I still think that that's the solution going forward, that,
I did mention that, following up on that, there are two ways that could happen. One is you could deny the application and then hope that the Ag Society would submit a new application based on some proposal that they develop that hopefully before we go to public hearing would be negotiated with the neighbors. That would be kind of the ideal situation. Or if the Ag Society could, if they're so authorized to do so tonight, could withdraw the application. But those are the two scenarios that would enable that sort of compromised discussion to take place. If you were to approve the application the way it's proposed, then of course the Ag Society in all likelihood would not submit any requests for any revisions. So
logistically, if they were to withdraw the application, how does that change what we are supposed to do or not do here?
and you don't have anything to act on. It's gone. It's done. The practical effect, I think, is denial versus their withdrawings is basically the same. Would put us back operating under the conditions of approval that we have right now, including the requirement for a 6-month notice.
The difference would be if they could come back at some point in the future with a comparably similar application to the one that's now, where if it's denied now, they would have to come back with an application of substantial difference?
Well, that's a little bit vague. They can't come back with exactly the same application. They'd have to come back with something different. How different from what they've actually proposed is not real clearly defined.
But a denial tonight does not preclude them from coming
No,
back.
absolutely not. And, they can also read between the lines, a denial with a hope that they come back with a revised application, hopefully would be read that way by the applicant.
So again, they could come back and talk to you, and then you can talk to the neighbors also at the same time and go back into this negotiation thing and try to see if they can work it out?
It doesn't have to be through me.
Well, somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to be, Aaron and I together would be happy to mediate, a discussion if that was, if the parties thought that was
It
useful.
seems to be the only way it's going to work, is somebody's got to be the mediator there so that they can work between the two, is that they're going to have to come up with a solution that both can live with.
I think that's the bottom line, right?
Because there definitely is some problems with this, I can see that. I mean, don't forget, we're in a residential neighborhood, and the people in that neighborhood live there 12 months of the year, so their consideration is very important. because that's their livelihood. So this thing about renting it out for whatever, making noise on a weekend, I can see where people would be upset, so I think they're going to have to sit down and work something out with you, between them, the two of them, try to work it out. I would like to see that happen.
I think we should probably try and act on this. So if someone would like to make a motion.
I think we
Okay.
also need to consider the time frame of this 6 months period, because I think we can all agree that's a little unreasonable amount of time. I think it's a little bit too long. I mean, I think we could probably decide amongst us within one meeting whether an event would be appropriate.
I don't think we should be making modifications without public input.
Yeah. But I just, that's my point.
If someone wants to make a motion and there's a second, then we can have discussion. Anyone?
But I'll read
There you go.
I'll read the proposed motion. Approval?
Or, I would go two.
Let's go. Okay, we'll go with this. Is probably going to work the scenario better for all concerned. Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission deny the request of the Ag Society to amend the special permit conditions for the use of the fairgrounds at 111 Lovers Lane, map 40, lot 138 as follows. Eliminate the words "of a nonprofit nature" from condition 5 of the May 26, 1989 special permit, and eliminate condition number 2 from the April 22nd, 2016 special permit. This amendment is denied without prejudice based on the finding that it does not conform with the zoning code and will allow the use of the fairgrounds in a manner that is not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood.
Is it point where, am I allowed, based on the
Yes.
number here, to vote? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
because we only have 7.
So I'll second that.
Okay, very good. Discussion?
Sounds good to me.
You know, again, I've said this 3 times now, I think anything we were to do now, modifying conditions of a special permit, would subject us and the building department to quite a bit of scrutiny if it went sideways. And I'd rather get it right once, and I appreciate that, you know, making them go through the process again is cumbersome, but I'd rather get it done once right.
We've been dealing with this as long as we spoke today, as long as you and I have been on this commission. And that was part of the 2016 decision. I'd like to get it right and like to not have these people coming before us all the time. I know it's a tough sell, but something's got to happen.
And I think it's important to reemphasize, it's a residential zone. And this just strikes me as special permit creep. You can't keep, that's the way it strikes me.
Yeah, again, it's a tough line to walk, and I can understand the Agricultural Society is a big part of Guilford, very important. We all go to the fairgrounds and use them, but again, as we discussed earlier, I'm worried about that creep. I'm worried about just trying to wipe out all regulations that are in place to protect quality of life. That's part of our charge, residential life. So I like this idea of denying it, and then if they want to go forward and do something else with a changed application, that gives them that opportunity.
I think it's a very good group, the agricultural. I think they're very good. They really are. They do a lot for the town. But I gotta say, we have to look out for the neighbors too. So you're gonna have to work something out where it's kind of give a little and take a little. We have to look out for our neighbors, the people that live in those houses, because this is a residential area. So that we have to look out for.
I agree. I wish there was more compromise. I think the proposal may have went maybe a little bit too far, and we do absolutely need to protect the neighborhood.
And personally, I do think that there are a lot of areas, if it were presented correctly, where we can have a shorter period of time, where we can amend the wording to allow events like weddings or reunions, or, you know, what one might define as a low-impact event. But that's not in front of us now. and I don't think it's appropriate for us to make those changes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's a lot of opportunity here to correct some of these things from the previous special permit that might be troublesome. But what's presented in front of us is very cut and dry. It really boxes us into a corner.
Any further discussion?
No, I also think it gives the Ag Society some room, exactly as Scott just said, to even refine a little bit more of all these permits and make it that we don't have to go through a 6-month cycle. And not exclude weddings even.
Certainly could be better for both sides.
Yes.
I think, yeah, one of the major concerns, I think, was just opening up the location as a wedding venue in particular. That was one of the biggest concerns I think people had.
You good? So the motion before us is to deny the application. So I'll call the vote. All in favor of denying the application? Aye. Okay. Next item on the agenda, zoning amendment. Proposed amendment to subdivision code regarding fee in lieu of open space. Discussion, set public hearing date.
We're not ready to do this yet.
Okay.
We're still working on it, so we'd like you to just table this.
Great. Someone like to make a motion to table?
Motion to table?
All in favor? Thank you. Site plan Town of Guilford, Nut Plains Road, map 86, lot 63, zone R5. Site plan provision to construct a 12 by 14 shade structure in the park.
Hello, my name is Ellen Clow. I'm the Recreation Supervisor for the Parks and Recreation Department. What we're looking to do at Nut Plains Park is within the dog park, which there's a lot of volunteers that help with that park and have input in what things they'd like to implement. And the latest is to put a gazebo structure that's 12 by 14 inside the park next to the kiosk. And that would be for rain or shine. People are enjoying the park, they're taking their dogs there, and this would give them an area to sit and be protected from either the sun or rain or other elements that might be there.
Pretty shady now, isn't it?
It is shady. There are a lot of trees there, but there's also a lot of people using the park when it's raining out, so this would provide them shelter from that.
As I see on the map, almost like behind the signage area and
Right inside the park next to the kiosk.
the
Yep,
large dog area.
yep.
Shading for big dogs.
What's it gonna be made out of?
With the application, I think the last page of it had a picture of it. It's wood and aluminum. And we have worked with the high school in the past on a couple of projects, and David Hackett said that a class at the high school would take this project on if it was approved.
Or the Eagle Scout candidate, too.
Yeah, the Boy Scouts did some clearing of land.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, and that they also put the kiosk in.
Oh, okay.
That's nice.
Next stage.
That's from donations.
Yeah, I think so. You guys,
No cost to the town. It would be completely donated materials and,
There would be things that were purchased, but the dog park has had events with donations, so yes, technically no cost to the taxpayers because it would be through the donations.
Okay, it's voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a set plan application map 86, lot 63 for a shaded structure at Nut Plains Park, as shown in the application dated October 3rd, 2018. The application is approved with the following conditions. The application is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the zoning code.
Second.
discussion, okay. Discussion?
I like it.
I think it's great.
You
I
want
think
to
it's pretty cut and dry. It's only got enhanced in it, too.
Yeah.
Well, we still have to vote.
We haven't voted.
I got a good feeling about this one.
It's not as controversial
Uh,
as.
So we have a motion, second, discussion. Everyone good on discussion?
Good on it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve or vote to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There you go. Thank you.
Are you up on the next one, too?
Next one is actually, we're just going to receive this, is Town of Guilford, 47 driveway, map 34, lot 17, zone I2, site plan revision to allow for replacement of a 12 by 64 temporary office trailer. So we'd like to receive that.
Vote to receive and favorable action?
Second. Okay. All in favor? Good, we have received. Michael and Megan Lindsay, 705 Boston Post Road, map 48, lot 6, zone TS, site plan revision for change of use from office to hair salon. We'd like to receive and take action. Welcome.
Megan, Megan Lindsay, yep.
And your address?
Oh, home address or the
Yes.
address? 47 Cornwall Lane, Guilford.
And we're just looking for a change of use from a...
That's it, it was an office.
Approved use to another-
It was an office space, the building that we're in, although there was a salon in the front half, it's still part of the same building, but instead we're in the back now, so it's not that same space. So our space needs to have a change of use, because it was an office before.
Which space exactly is this? I know like 680.
Unit 7A.
Yeah, 7A, it's on the back side, so,
705.
yeah, it's,
Sorry.
let's see, to say exact, it's, there's aquatic pools, and then there's a vision
yeah.
place.
It's a-
Oh,
Lighthouse
Lighthouse
Square.
Square, yeah,
it's on the
Lighthouse
north
Square.
side of
Yes,
Gilmore. It's
correct,
on-
yes, correct, I'm sorry, yes.
Great.
We have a letter from Dennis Johnson, Director of Health. They weigh in, especially when these are salons.
Yeah, understood.
The applicant's proposed change of use from office space to hair salon is compatible with the septic system design capacity currently existing on the site. It is recommended that the applicant's proposed change in use be permitted or approved.
Very good. Do you have that letter?
You have
Or
a
do you
copy
want
of
it?
this?
You're more than welcome to take it if you'd like.
And you want it? 'Cause, we're talking about hair salons. You need-
I called and talked to him, so that verbally, yes, I kind of do that part already, so.
Yeah.
Okay. So proposed motion for the Lindsay application, voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve the site plan revision for a change of use from office to hair salon for Michael and Megan Lindsay, 705 Boston Post Road, map 48, lot 6, as shown on the application dated October 17, 2018. This application is approved with the following conditions. The application is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the zoning code.
Second.
Very good discussion. Great. I mean, it checks all the boxes. So, one of the things we're discussing is whether or not these things actually have to come before us. If it's an approved use before and after, it's just a change of use, whether or not, we need to take up your time and our time to do this. But thank you for coming out. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Um,
Very much.
So I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Finally, zoning enforcement officer report. Zoning officer report, complaint regarding firewood business at 84 Jacobs Lane. Aaron, what are we doing?
We have had a history at 84 Jacobs Lane of a complaint of our tenant who's here, Mr. Rob Carter. Our neighbor Jane Williams is concerned that he is running a wood cutting business from his property. So there's been history dating back to 2015 that Reggie Reed had followed up on with this history of a wood cutting business, basically splitting and delivering wood from a residential zone as a business use. Mrs. Williams is concerned with noise and just this type of operation being in a residential zone. Earlier this year, I received a complaint from Mrs. Williams of a shed being constructed on the property, just to give you some history. So Mr. Carter built sort of a makeshift shed on the property without permits. I followed up with him. We've had a couple inspections out on the property for this. He has since come in with, obtained zoning approval and building permit, and has constructed a new shed that complies with the setbacks. We've had discussions as far as not running a business out of the property. I think there's still concern from Mrs. Williams that Rob is running a business. At the time of the concern, there was no wood-burning stove on the property. Mr. Carter said that he was using wood for his own, storing it, using it for his own personal use. He has since come in this fall, in October, and obtained a permit for a wood-burning stove in his shed, as a, workshop-type shed. So at this point, there is, presumably, from a zoning standpoint, he's allowed to store wood on his property for his own personal use. He is allowed to bring in wood for his own personal use, split wood on the site for his own personal use. It's differentiating whether or not any of this is actually being used for a business. I've spoken with Rob, and he has told me that he now has a commercial location for his business. Mrs. Williams still believes that this business is taking place on the residential property.
Do we have
So I think
any evidence to that effect?
I do not at this, I don't have any physical evidence as far as photographs or documentation. Mrs. Williams has said she has seen the truck leaving with wood. This is one of these.
How much wood is being stored on the property?
Rob, how many cords of wood do you have now?
Maybe 5 cords.
5 cords, and a cord of wood is 4 by 4 by 8, right? That's a fairly large stack. The topography.
If I could finish, most of it is just, I stored it as like a barrier on the left side to block me out from the only view that I have to Miss Williams, which will be used. Because we had an agreement, and I said I would not continue to bring wood in and bring wood out. The only wood that has come out lately, maybe 2 loads, the town took a tree down, a big maple, and you guys said I could take that wood off the property because it was took down on the property. And I also have been doing work across the street from my neighbor, so I have wood coming out of there as I cut the tree down. I am not running a business there. I agreed that I would not bring wood in or take wood out anymore, and that's what I'm doing. I'm abiding by all the...
I think if you wanted to actually do that, you'd have to have a special permit, so.
I've asked for
That's fine, just, as a point of clarity.
No, it's not allowed.
No? It's not allowed use?
That's a commercial, contractors,
Okay.
that's not an allowed use in a residential zone.
I'm not doing anything wrong.
He doesn't have any signs or anything, so that's obvious, right? You would have picked that up. So there's
There are no
out
signs
there
on the
saying-
property,
There's no signs that saying for sale, wood for sale out in front of it.
not from the location,
And didn't this
no.
come up with Reggie? Don't I remember that?
Right, there were fines in the
I
past.
remember he came once, right? He came once before on this, a couple of years ago.
I'm
When's
not
that?
sure.
Yeah, when I had my large wood pile, she
Maybe.
gave me a certain amount of time to get rid of it, and I did so.
Yeah, because I remember this coming before us.
You know,
When I
I
first started
followed
here.
everything he had asked of me.
This isn't a public hearing, this is just,
Oh,
we're just trying to get input if you'd like to say something.
My name is Jane Williams. I live at 68 Jacobs Lane. I own 3 houses here in Guilford, and I've owned 68 Jacobs Lane for 41 years. I've watched the property change, and I've watched people split wood, cut wood, Reggie was supposed to do something for me, but she never did. And it's been going on now for 4 and some odd years. He's up there cutting wood, he's putting it in the truck, and I hear it because it's on the ledge. You hear that thump, thump, thump when he's filling up the truck to take it out. It's just, the noise is horrendous, and I just am getting very tired of it, and I need some help here to get this to end.
Again, in the absence of any evidence relating to, and, we're not a legal body that's going out to start investigations.
I understand that. I'm putting cameras around my whole house now, and I will watch everything, and it'll all be recorded.
Well, again, I'll play devil's advocate with you. If he's going out to give wood to a friend, I don't.
No, he can't even do that, can he, George?
Give wood away?
No.
No.
That's a good
I mean,
question.
if my parents said to me, come bring me some wood, I'd bring them some wood.
It's a very...
I mean,
I
it's a
don't-
slippery slope. I mean, in terms of.
I understand what you're saying, but I live with that noise all the time. And it's impossible to live with that noise over and over. He's put a wood stove in his shed. I've called the fire marshal, and he's not let the fire marshal in to check it. I have cedar roofs, gentlemen. That makes me very nervous. That property, that shed is very close to my property.
Wood stove been inspected? Can we?
Building official?
Yeah.
It hadn't as of
If-
yesterday.
Would you be okay with them doing that?
I haven't even put the pipe in
Okay.
because they said approve the permit first before
Okay.
I even put the
Yeah,
pipe
so
in.
before you start burning on the wood stove, have it inspected, because obviously.
Burning the wood
Could I just
stove
say
already.
one more thing real
Sure,
quick?
absolutely.
Just to bring something to light here, I built this shed for my four-wheeler, for my snowmobiles, and for me to have a place where I can work on my stuff. I'm being accused of housing people in this shed already. Okay, this is not just a complaint about noise, because I haven't been doing a lot of wood there. I've slowed and almost stopped the wood. I have one more load of the tree by the road to come out. I don't even want to do anything with wood there. I'm almost at the point where I don't even want to burn wood there now. But, it's not right for me to be accused for all this different stuff either.
We're trying to get to the bottom and get everything
I just
smoothed out.
wanted to bring that.
We've already had the health people out when they dumped all this garbage on my line, and they had to clean all that up. I'm dealing with a chronic problem here, gentlemen, that goes on and on and on. What does he do in the winter? What does he do now? He's a landscaper. What do you do in the winter when you don't have landscaping to do? You do wood. He's going to go back and he's going to do the wood all over again, and this will start all over again. Now, I have a choice. I can either go to you people, and I'm going to speak to the first selectman on Friday, or I can sue the town. I cannot stand this noise anymore, and the sawing and all the noise that goes with it. I just am at the point of no return. It wasn't so bad when I had a house in Georgia and I went back and forth, but I'm full-time at that house.
Given our discussions about the agricultural society and the noise ordinance, I mean, have you called to have the police come register the amplitude of the noise?
No, I haven't. I didn't know I could do that.
It's 84 dB, so it's going to
Okay,
be very loud.
I'm just.
How about when she did her house all last summer, 7 o'clock in the morning, boom, 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 all summer last year? I did not complain once. I said nothing. How about her garage?
All right.
You know?
Look, I mean, again,
I know.
there's nothing before us to act on. I'm just trying to. So
It's a
what?
waste of time is what it is, because I'm not doing anything.
Right, so what I would suggest is, if you feel you need to bolster a case, I would work with the zoning enforcement officer. If you feel that she can help you mitigate some of these concerns, none of us want to have unhappy neighbors, so let's do what we can, and I will kick this back to Reggie. I'm sorry, to Aaron. Sorry, that was like. Yeah, we can send it to Reggie. I can guarantee you nothing's going to happen if it goes to Reggie.
It's been going on too
I-
long,
there's- we have
gentlemen,
not-
to put it anywhere.
So.
I understand that. I do understand that. But it's going to continue, and it's going to keep going on, because he has no work in the winter, and wood is it. And I'd like to know where you're moving to. Where's the commercial place you're moving to?
We're none of your business.
say.
See?
Well, let's, there's nothing before us now, so what I'm going to do is suggest that we wrap this up, that you work with Aaron or don't work with Aaron. If you feel you need to sue, that's something, it's obviously your choice. Any of us can sue any of us at any time. I think you'd have a pretty high bar to get over, but you have to do what you have to do. And at the end of the day, if that's the difference in your quality of life, then that's what you have to do. Again, my recommendation would be try and, work something with Aaron, work something with your neighbor, but, there's nothing before us now, and it's not for
I
us to act on
understand.
this anyway.
I understand
So I do appreciate your concerns, but I think we're going to just throw this back to Aaron.
That's
Okay?
fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Other reports, zoning committee, planning committee. So we have several openings on both of those committees, and I would respectfully like to ask, I've talked to Sean, I talked to Alan, I know you're on the regional council. Scott, would you be interested in serving on one or either? That would be great. So the zoning committee kind of discusses changes in zoning code. Planning committee kind of discusses various planning aspects about the town, whether it be PRD changes or open space or whatever it might be. So that would be great if you would do it. You're currently on zoning. Planning it is. And Sean, you said you would take over as chair of the zoning. That would be great. From Josh, assuming Josh leaves and moves on.
Let's go over that again, so Lisa gets who's.
Sorry, so Scott's going to jump on to the zoning committee, is that what you said, or the planning?
Whatever you need me to do, it doesn't actually.
I thought you said planning.
You said.
Planning, and Russ Campaign is the chair of that, he's great, he's terrific.
I'll do zoning.
Okay, terrific, and Matt's already serving,
I'm already serving on zoning.
he's on zoning, and then you're going to chair zoning, terrific. Okay, that was easy, thank you. Discussion of site plan modifications and permit process for allowing business zones. This is what we were talking about in terms of the, so the folks that came before us for the change of use where both uses are permitted by right. Struggling.
There's nothing explicit in the zoning code that says anything about this particular question. It's just something that we've done. When you change from one use to another within a commercial zone, even though there's no physical improvements required other than interior, we require the applicant to make a so-called site plan application for a change in use, just like you saw tonight, change from office to personal service establishment. It's been challenged in a couple of cases by applicants asking us to demonstrate or show them why they have to do this. It's extra time for them. There is a fee. They have to come before the commission. The uses that we're talking about are uses that are allowed by right within the zone, so there's not any discretion on your part. The two things that we usually look for are, is the new use going to require more parking than the previous use, and is there adequate parking on the property to conform to the zoning requirement for parking, such as, for example, if you went from office to retail or office to restaurant, there would be typically a larger parking requirement for the restaurant or the retail. And we also ask the Director of Health to make sure that there isn't any issue with the septic system. We can do those compliance things, the parking and the septic, and with a staff review. In fact, we've talked about creating a piece of paper that you would have to fill out when you were doing this, so we could kind of keep track of it.
Like a tenant fit out.
Would we just clarify this then within the zoning code that these things would be handled by town staff?
Well, we wouldn't have to do that at all, because
The amendment.
what we probably should do is, if you want to continue to do what we're doing now, we should amend the zoning code to make it explicit that you have to make a site plan application for a change of use. If we leave it unsaid the way it is now, we can just abandon or cease the practice that we've been following and create this new documentation administratively.
Which would preclude them having to come before a hearing. It would just be something
Well,
that,
they're not hearings anyways.
It's not a public hearing
But it
because
would
it's a
re- it
permitted
would-
use.
They would not have to come to a meeting.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
right.
No change of use, just.
Not
Right.
technically a hearing, but something that you could document and make some kind of determination of whether the impact is.
What's our biggest downside? I mean, if, like, somebody comes in and they have again, I'm just throwing out, like, a pet grooming business, and so there's gonna be, dogs barking. I mean, we probably would have to approve it anyway, it's just.
Yeah, you would.
So,
If there's a use that has the potential to be adverse or have an adverse impact on a case-by-case basis, then it should be an application that requires planning and zoning approval, like a special permit. Like doggy daycare, I think is a special permit use. There are others. And there you are granted the discretion to approve or deny depending on the specific circumstances of the application. In the case of a permitted use, you don't have the discretion to deny it unless it doesn't satisfy one of the quantitative standards like parking, or unless the septic system is inadequate, in which case it's not really your jurisdiction anyway. It's the health department that says, no, you can't put a restaurant here because you can't satisfy the septic, regardless of whether the regulations say, the zoning regulations say you can have a restaurant or not. So there really isn't much
Well, it could be
downside.
handled by town staff. I mean, I'm not, and all we have to do is basically say, please handle this. If at some point in the future, we find this starting to become a problem, then we can bring it back.
And we changed the regulations to make it clear that you have to apply even though it's just a change in use.
And plus, if it's a change of use, a lot of times they're gonna go through their own construction parts, they're gonna have to get building permits and everything else, and that'll conform to code, so.
Right. Even if they're not doing any physical improvements, including interior improvements, change in use almost always requires a sign permit. So it's extremely unlikely that there would ever be a change that we wouldn't be aware of through one of those
But is it
vehicles.
fair to say that by making this change and admittedly putting more of a burden on town staff to do some of this work, that we are lessening a regulatory burden on the public to come before?
That's my goal, is to make it easier to come in for approvals so that I can also have a better track of what's happening in different plazas. If I have a running list and I have a site plan that shows this tenant is this use, when somebody swaps out, I can say, well, this is what the parking is for these other tenants, I know. And for signage, it helps. I would prefer to have that, even replacement offices, just replacement occupants, to just be required to have tenant fit out so that we can keep track of the uses on properties. I think that would be.
It's not an administrative burden, because we already have to do that anyway.
Right.
To make sure that it.
Just shortens your time.
Yeah, right.
But I think we've had a number of instances, since I've been on this commission, where it's been pretty, not just routine, but, people have come before the commission, and they spent an hour or two here, and they could have been spending their time much better doing something else.
They didn't have to wait
On a
very long.
going forward basis, why don't you guys handle that? If there's a problem, bring it back to us.
That'd be great.
I mean, or you set up a checklist for a simple conversion, and then one if it requires.
Update us on that in the next meeting. Speaking of next meeting, we don't have anything to.
Good point. Glad you remember that.
So there are no items on our agenda, so what I would propose is that we waive our next meeting, which I believe is the 21st. The day before Thanksgiving too, so.
We don't want to revert back to that.
We're not going to do that. So anyone have a chance to take a look at the minutes?
I'm going to abstain from this because I was absent.
I reviewed them, and they seem substantially correct. So I would make a motion to approve them.
Second.
All in favor? Motion to adjourn with no further business before this.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
8:15. There we go.
That could be the new time.